Good afternoon and good morrow to thee, my loyal subjects. My name is MiAh the King, and today we're taking a look at a game that came out on Steam this afternoon called Geyser, Couriers of Darkness. Now, I don't know much about this game except what's on the Steam store page, and from what I can gather, it's right up my alley. Now, if you're new here, or if you haven't been paying attention, then listen up. I love games like this. Love them. I've played so many I can't even remember them all, so I know a thing or two about games like this. But Geyser, Couriers of Darkness is explained as such on the Steam store page just in case. Geyser is an isometric party-based fantasy RPG inspired by the genre classics, recruit characters with unique personalities, and explore a land ravaged by civil war and a mysterious curse of greed. Your choices, good or evil, will decide the fate of the kingdom of Isometric. So let's hop into this with the pros and cons followed by my final thoughts. Up first are the cons, because unfortunately these are what spoke to me first, but don't be too bothered, make sure you listen to the pros as well just in case, alright? Also, this game is in early access, it is not a finished product, but that only goes so far in terms of an excuse for poor design or gameplay, alright? So if I complain a lot, it is in early access, but that isn't an excuse because I promise I've already taken that into account when reviewing this, alright? Okay then. Let's start. Number 1. The voice acting feels so forced. It was the very first thing that came across to me, and the very first thing that negatively stood out to me, which is a damn shame. It feels forced and unnatural. For example, they speak too slowly and too pronounced. Here, allow me to demonstrate. So this is how they would speak. No, my good sir, no one actually talks like this. This is merely how we speak when we are making fun of such hoity-toity rich folks. But in reality, people speak more fluidly like this. No, my good sir, no one actually talks like this. This is merely how we speak when we are trying to talk normally and not make fun of rich folks. See the difference? There's a difference between sounding, stiff and forced and sounding more fluid and natural. Now, I'm not an actor, so it probably wasn't that good, but you get the point, right? You see the difference? That's what I'm talking about. Imagine option 1 for all the dialogue. Number 2, when you loot something, the highlight color that stays around, like the chest or whatever that we've seen in these games, it stays the exact same. It doesn't gray out, it doesn't go away. So this can become very confusing when you're looting a big room or a dungeon or something, and you have no idea which chests or boxes you've already checked and opened, because to you there's no difference between a chest that has been searched and one that hasn't. You just have to mentally remind yourself that you've checked these ones, because there will be no difference on the UI. They're all going to be highlighted regardless of whether you've searched them or not. Number 3. The ragdoll physics for the characters are really stiff and yet somehow really exaggerated, and I wasn't expecting to see them either. Not once did I see any fluid motion that looked realistic, even during combat, and at a high moment where I kinda hoped to see it, where a man was about to be stabbed, the screen panned away and it was left to your imagination. I was really hoping that the character was gonna have his arm kinda come up and grab the other guy's shoulder in a comforting way as he slowly moves closer, draws the blade out of his back and then stabs it into his gut. That level of detail for characters such as this would have been interesting, and it would have been something new that I don't think I'd seen before, but no, instead they just fade to black basically. Number 4. Now this one isn't that big of a deal, but I had to make mention of it. There are no resting cutscenes. You know how in Baldur's Gate or Pillars of Eternity, when you rest either at a campfire or at a tavern, you get that sminy, tiny, unimportant cutscene with a fireplace burning or whatever? Yeah, that isn't here. Just fades to black and then fade back in. Don't know if it's because the game is unfinished or if it's laziness, but it's not there and it should be. That's almost a staple of games like this at this point, and I want it back. Number 5, the overall speed of everything is just way too slow. Watching my wizard slowly swing his staff is frickin' painful. Watching the enemies slowly move around and slowly swing their swords. Why is everything in slow motion here? Hell, Pathfinder Kingmaker had me complaining that it was slow, but after playing this, I take it all back. This is slow gameplay that needs to be fixed immediately. I used to think that Baldur's Gate or Pillars of Eternity was too fast, but holy crap, this is way too slow. Maybe that was done on purpose, but wow, it's just too slow. And another thing, a side note, this isn't even in my notes, but why is it that every time I play these games, I never get the wizard who has an auto attack that's from range? Pillars of Eternity gave you those stupid little wands, sure, great, cool, I guess, it's kind of lame looking, but whatever. Why can't I have a staff, like in Dragon Age Origins, where they, launch a little tiny arcane mystical blast from their staff? Wizards use staffs, but wizards are never fighting on the front lines. So, like, what the heck? Give me something. You know, at least Pathfinder Kingmaker made it so you could have a very weak magical attack that was auto-cast, but why can't I get more like that? I mean, ugh, it's so annoying. Number 6, the combat is a little bit too hard from the beginning. Now, I'm not bitching, I'm not complaining, and I'm not, you know, get good. You know, I think I'm fairly decent at games like this. I know games like this are supposed to be difficult, okay? I'm fully aware of this. But every single game starts you off with simple or easy fighting enemies that are level 1, you know, one at a time, so that you can kind of learn and grow and get better at the game without rage quitting and being upset, without bad luck rolls and everything else. But I died twice in my first hour due to BS game mechanics and bad luck. I mean, the original Baldur's Gate was more kind to me than this game was, and that game was brutal to spellcasters. Come on, that's ridiculous. Number 7, there is an over-encumbered function? I mean, what the frick? I have never seen that in a game like this before, and for good frickin' reason. It's ridiculous and makes absolutely no frickin' sense. It puts a terrible taste in my mouth right off the bat. I mean, we all know the only way to make money in games like this is by looting everything that isn't nailed down, hoarding everything, and selling it all. It's the only chance you have of ever making anything. And I don't really ever recall ever having to deal with an over-encumbered function in any of those games before, and if they did have it, it wasn't as painful as it was here. I mean, I died because I didn't even realize I was over-encumbered, and suddenly my wimpy, scrawny mage couldn't move an inch because he was carrying too many damn enemy shields. I mean, what? Why? Why is that a thing? Hate it. Number 8. I was hoping for something different or amazing in terms of graphics, but I'm not really getting it here. I mean, the detail in your character is a little bit childish and reminds me of like old-fashioned RuneScape. The game's details are all over the place. In some places it's really got good attention to detail, in other places it's just very vague and broad and not very good looking at all. I mean, it's really hard for me to give any good points towards its graphics now that I look at it up close. Maybe on the Steam store page it looked better, but it doesn't look so good when you're actually playing it. Number 9. This next one is a personal complaint of mine. How come they didn't give my mage any kind of magic missile spell? It is my all-time favorite spell, and my favorite thing to do is to get like a super high-level wizard or mage or whatever, and power that badass spell up and launch it like crazy. Every one of these games that I've ever played, when I play a spellcaster, I have that spell or the equivalent to that spell, and it allows me to have fun messing with it. But this game didn't, and it automatically gets a negative point for me simply because of that. You automatically failed, you messed up the mage class. But that's all the negatives that I could think of right off the bat, the ones that stood out to me the most. Now that's a lot, that's the most negatives I've had for a game in a long time. There may be more, but currently that's all I have. So now we're going to go into the positives, but first, before that, if you don't mind taking a moment and considering supporting my channel and possibly joining my kingdom. How can you join my kingdom? Hit subscribe. How to show your support? Well, you can like the video, you can leave a comment, or you can share the video. Every little bit you guys do is super supportive, and every little bit helps a lot, so please consider helping me out today. After all, it only takes you a few seconds and costs you nothing. Thank you so much. Now back to the positive points. Number 1, love the music. Classic isometric RPG style music, and it fits it perfectly. No complaints there at all. I also want to mention, I love the sound effects. The sound of casting spells and clashing of swords is awesome, and I love it. Too bad the voice acting isn't much better. Number 2, the game's lore and story. It's classic and unoriginal, sure, and I want to key that point up because I didn't mention that in the negatives. The game's story is unoriginal, cliche, and boring. But back to the positive point, I love the world building. I love how it's its own thing, and I love how they're trying to join the genre with their own fresh take on the old isometric RPG style. Like I said, the story is cliche and unoriginal, but their world, lore, magic, and other things are all pretty darn decent. Number 3, the game did have a tutorial. It was mixed into the story and world. It wasn't super complicated, but it wasn't super simple. It allowed me to learn and understand fairly well as I played, and overall it helped me adjust to this new version of isometric gameplay. And you know what? I gotta give it a point for that because you wouldn't believe how many games don't give me stuff like that. Number 4, this is a really big positive point for me, and it should be for you guys, so pay attention to this one. It should take up several good points, but I don't have time for that. This game is a damn good classic isometric RPG with a whole new world, gameplay, mechanics, lore, spells, items, and I could keep going on. It does almost everything in those types of games correctly. It gives you the pausing mechanic, but doesn't automatically pause for combat or traps, which is bullshit. It gives you the speed up button, the classic flavored text of items, the character customization, full voice acting, and the list goes on. Overall, in terms of isometric RPG style games, it does everything you're hoping it's going to do, and it's going to scratch that itch for you without a doubt. That's a big point. That's a big point. Number 5, and my last positive point, the attention to detail here. Now, I'm not speaking about the graphics, because obviously they need a little bit more polish, but what I mean is in the skills, the stats, the voice acting of you, the protagonist, the items, the spells, the text in books teaching you stories and history and other world building, the choices, the interaction with the world, and the list goes on and on. You can be whatever kind of hero you want to be, you can do whatever you want to do in this world, and I love it, and I gotta make mention of it. So, that's all I got for the pros and cons, everybody. So, I guess, what do I think overall? I mean, that's a tough one. Do I like the game? Unfortunately, no, not really. I mean, is it worth it, though? That's also kind of hard to tell. I mean, first off, it's an investment. And for an isometric game like this, where you have to spend tens of hours to get to the good shit, only to find out the game isn't finished, and it's broken and buggy and overall not polished, I mean, it just seems like a bit of a stretch for me, you know? I think this game doesn't do anything new. It doesn't do anything fresh. And it kind of just uses the same old formula that the other games have used. But, you know, it takes out all the good stuff that we liked and kept on all the really annoying stuff we didn't like. I'm not very impressed, and honestly, I don't really want to keep playing it. It's a lot closer to Baldur's Gate than it is closer to things like Pillars of Eternity or Pathfinder Kingmaker in terms of harshness and realism, but it doesn't really have the flair or the polish or the addictive nature of Baldur's Gate. And we're talking about a game that came out like 20 years ago. You know, I want to support games like this, but in my first hour of gameplay, I was more irritated and annoyed and bored than I was addicted or wanting to get deep into it. Like I said earlier, the story is so cliche and unoriginal, so there's nothing there to keep me interested, because it's nothing new, it's nothing I haven't seen before. Basically, you're the spoiler alert, so if you don't want to hear this, you know, skip ahead like a minute. But basically, you're the bastard son of a lord, and you don't find out until he dies, and now you have a stepbrother who killed him, and you have to basically go on your way and try to get revenge while learning about your family line, and eventually take your place on the rightful, you know, lordship throne, whatever. You know what I'm saying? We've seen it before. We've been there, done that. In terms of gameplay, there isn't a lot of new stuff there, except a more in-depth alchemy mechanic, which I guess is kind of cool, but it's not that big a deal to me. And the combat is slow and awkward, and it's just a little bit too difficult for these kind of games, if that means anything. I don't really enjoy it. I didn't enjoy playing it, and I don't really think I'm going to enjoy it if I play it for longer. I think I'm just going to get more annoyed the more I play it. But, I mean, for the rest of you out there, if my long list of negatives doesn't bug you, and if you're just desperate for another well-written isometric RPG, because I will say it is well-written, then, you know, this is going to scratch that itch for you. If you just want to support games like this, then I encourage you to do that too, because we need more games like this. But this particular game, it's just unpolished, it's unfinished, missing some key components. It's got a lot of annoying irritants that the other games were getting rid of because they knew it was an irritant, and these guys just, I guess they just didn't realize that or whatever. And, you know, they miss the key components that I feel are necessary, and a lot of players probably feel are necessary. And it just makes playing these games more frustrating than they already are to begin with. Like, these games are already difficult and frustrating on a certain level, and this game just highlighted that, rather than made the game more fluid and fun. Does that make any sense? It's hard to recommend whether you should give it a try or not, honestly. At this point, I'm not going to. I want to support games like this, but I feel like, you know, this game needs maybe some updates, some changes to it, before I'm willing to play $20+ for it, you know? So, take what you will from my video, but I've played both Baldur's Gates, both Icewind Dales, Pillars of Eternity, Pathfinder Kingmaker, and others that I just can't remember their names of right now. And from all those, this game to me, in my own personal opinion, feels like it took out all the good from those games and kept all the bad from those games, and I'm just not feeling it. Which is a damn shame, because I really wanted to like this, and I was super looking forward to it. So, you know, it's just disappointing that it came out in this state, or it came out in this way. It's not at all what I was expecting, and I just found myself unimpressed, uninterested, and frustrated. So take that for what you will. But that's all the time I got for this video, everyone. Thank you all so much for stopping by and checking it out. I hope this video was entertaining, or at the very least informative, and I hope I was able to help some of you out there to spend your money wisely. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help my small channel grow, and I can't wait to see you all again on my next adventure. So until then, I bid you all farewell.